My name is Skylar Mansfield. I'm the head football coach at Winterboro High School, and today I will be talking to you about defense. Now, when we talk about defense, there are many components of defense and the way a defense is structured. But the first thing you must know is the purpose and the role of the defense. So, when you talk about the role and the purpose of the defense and the importance of defense, you must know the purpose of the defense is to stop the offense. In order to do that, there are specific positions that have specific roles in order to make the defense successful. So, let's look at a couple of things about defense. So, when you first get into your defensive practice, the number one thing you have to do is make sure your players are properly warmed up and that your players are going through the process of preventing injuries. So the main thing you want to do is make sure your players are warmed up with a little bit of dynamic warm up. That's the A skip, the B skip, the walking lunges, the high knees, things like that, as well as a couple of agility things, such as the slides, lateral shuffles, things to get kind of warm the muscles up and get loose before you get into the actual part of going through your drills. Now, let's talk about the individual parts of your football defensive team. Now, there are many positions on defense. It's just whatever your formation or whatever scheme you want to run, of how you organize your defense, how you label your players, how you label each position. So, of course, you know, in the front, there's the defensive line, and then you got your linebackers, and then you got your secondary, which is your cornerbacks and your safeties. To be more specific in this process, in a 3-4 defense, there's 4 linebackers, 3 down linemen, 4 defensive backs. Now, you can only play with 11 in American football. Canadian plays with 12. But we're playing American football, so we put 11 on the field. Now, to be specific, we have our defensive line, which will consist of D tackles. We just use DT for D tackles. In the 3-man front, we go DN, DN. So this makes up our D line in a 3-man front. Now, if we're in a 3-man front, that means we got 4 linebackers in a 3-4 defense. So that means we have linebacker, 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 and linebacker. Now you can call this left outside, you can call this right outside, you can call this the Sam, strong side, or you call him the wheel, which would be the weak side linebacker. So this gives us the base of our 3-4 defense. Now, if you're going to do this, then you got 4 defensive backs on the field. So that means you got a cornerback. You can call him the left cornerback, right cornerback. Since this is the Sam, you call him the strong safety. You can either call him the free safety or the weak safety. Typically, your strong safety goes to the strong side, which is identified by a tight end on multiple receivers. And then we go to the weak side, which is the least number of receivers or away from the tight end. So this right here gives you your 3-4 defense. Now, let's go to your 4-man. Now, when we start talking 4-man, in our 4-man, you can have a defensive tackle, a defensive tackle, a defensive end, a defensive end. Some people that runs a four-man line, they will say, we got a defensive tackle, and we got a nose. Typically, you will put your nose tackle in a one technique, and you will put your defensive tackle in a three technique. Typically, the nose tackle will be your bigger guy playing closer to the ball, and your defensive tackle will be your down a three technique, playing farthest away from the ball, but still your next biggest, best down lineman. Your defensive ends in a four-man front typically can play the run or the pass. They are contained players, and they're also pass rushers, and they're also run stoppers. Most people that play a four-man defense or four-man front is typically have athletic ends and big D tackles, and they force you to either try to run the ball outside or to try to throw the ball. Now, let's look at the techniques of the defensive line before we move on. Now, as far as the techniques of the D line, now, let's go through our defensive line techniques. Now, this is pretty particular because it sets your entire defense when you are running a three or four-man front. Very important that you get lined up right, because if you don't get lined up right, then the offense will expose your defense. So, we're looking at the fronts for the defense. Now, remember, offensively, you have the center, you have a guard, and you have a tackle. You have a guard, and you have a tackle. You have a tight end, and a tight end. This is your makeup of the offensive line. The defensive line lines up on the offensive line. Technique-wise, in an odd front, I will have head up to the center would be a zero technique. Head up to the center is a zero technique. Typically, in an odd front. If we call the strength this way, the outside shoulder of the center will be shade strong. So when you shade to the strong side of the center, it is called shade strong. The weak side, this is called shade weak. This is the strong side, this is the weak side. Typically, we would call it the weak side because there is no tight end. Tight end on this side makes it strong. No tight end makes it weak. So we call it strong on this side. So outside shoulder to center, to the strong side, shade strong. Outside shoulder to center, away from the tight end, we call it the weak side. Now, head up to the guard, either side will be a two technique. Head up to the center is a zero. Head up to the guards is a two technique. Head up, either side is a two technique, as long as it's head up. Head up to the tackles. Head up to the tackle is a four technique. Head up to the tackles, four technique. Head up to the tight end, six technique. Head up to the tight end, six technique. Now, this is where it can get a little tricky, especially when you're coaching a high school kid and you're trying to keep it consistent. Now, in the odd front, I got shade strong, shade weak. If I go for the even front, which is 4 down linemen, some people will call this a 2-eye. Inside the guard shoulder, a 2-eye. Inside eye of the guard would be a 2-eye, or we call it a 1 technique. Either side, you either got a 2-eye or a 1 technique. Most of the time, in order to call the fronts in a 4-man front, we would call it a 1 technique. Outside shoulder of the guard. Outside shoulder of the guard, we'll call it a 3 technique. That's outside shoulder of the guard, a 3 technique. Inside shoulder of the tackle, we call it a 4-eye. Typically, we say inside eye of the tackle. Line up inside the tackle's eye. That is a 4-eye. 4 inside tackle. Outside shoulder of the tackle, we say 5 technique. We say 5 technique. That is the outside shoulder of the tackle. To the tight end, inside shoulder of the tight end, 7 technique. We call it a 7 technique. And outside the tight end, we call it a 9. That's a 9 technique. So, head up is our even techniques. Outside or any kind of shade is an odd technique. So, this is the alignment for our defensive lineman. Now, we got our nose tackle, we got our defensive ends. We got an outside linebacker, and then we have our Sam and our Will. Will is to the weak side, Sam is to the strong side. Okay? Now, typically you would call, if I was calling my defensive front in an odd front, my base would be 0-4. So I would say 0-4, or I would say 4-0-4. That is my base because I put my nose head up to the center and I put my ends head up to the top. All right, you can either say 0-4 to get them lined up, or you can say 4-0-4 to get them lined up. Either way, you're talking to your front when you say that. Now, with that being said, let's go to our linebackers technique. All we do when we go to our linebacker technique is we will put the teams on it, or we will add a 0 to whatever the technique is. All right. So instead of, let's just draw another offensive line. Once again, it's going to be strong left because we got what? Tight end. Tight end is identifying the strong side. So if we go tight end here, we do the same thing we did with the defensive line. I want to get my linebackers aligned. Head up. That would be 20 to either side. Head up guard is a 20 technique. Head up the tackle, 40. Head up the tight end, 60. So that's how we get the base premise of lining our linebackers up. So if I want to line up, if I got this 0-4 front, and I want to get my linebackers lined up in a 20, I don't even have to tell them. They know if he's head up, head up, head up. Now my linebackers are going to pretty much be in an even technique, which would be Sam, Will in 20s. Now, the technique for trying to shade the backers will be just like the same thing we did for the D line. So, inside will be 20-eye. I would just shade my backer. I would just tell my backer shade to either side. I can also put my backer in a 0. So if I wanted my backer in a 0, I would just tell it in a 0. If I wanted a 20-eye, I would tell my backer inside, 20-eye. That's inside eye of the guard. I can go a 40-eye. I can go a 50-eye. Or not 50-eye, I'm sorry. 40-eye or a 50. Tell my backer to get in a 50. Tell my backer to get in a 30. So my backer, 30, 40, 50. Same technique for the D line, whether I'm telling them to get in a 2, 4, 6, a 2-eye, or a 1, a 3, or a 5 technique. All I'm doing is adding a 0 for my linebacker. Tell my backer to get in a 70 or a 90. That's how I can call my entire defense using numbers to get my defense lined up properly. Pretty simple once you start to understand the techniques. So I can get a whole defense lined up, even an odd front, just by using these numbers. It simplifies it for the players that I'm coaching or my teaching. So if I have a 4-man front, it still makes no difference. If I have a 4-man front, I can still get my 4-man front lined up. All I'm doing is using 4 numbers. Typically, if I want to go on a 4-man front and I use 4 digits, 36, 15. 36, 15. Right now, if I say 36, 15, I'm talking strong side. This is my strong side because that's my tight end. So I'm telling my tight end, I'm calling this side first. So if I go 36, 15, I'm telling my D tackle, he's in a 3 technique. He's outside shoulder of the guard. I'm telling my defensive end, he's in a 6 technique. So this is my 36. So my strong side is in a 3, my strong side in a 3 and a 6 technique. If I say 15, I'm talking to the weak side. I want this deep, well, we call him a nose tackle. I want him in a 1 technique. And I want him in a 5 technique. Now this is how I get my defensive line lined up without telling them specifically or having to tell each one of them how to line up. So I can put a system in place to where I can signal this and get them lined up. So this is a 36, 15 front. Now, typically, if I'm going to run 2 linebackers, typically I will put one linebacker in a 30, and I will put one linebacker in a 40. Now, if I'm going with three linebackers, I will put this linebacker, which will be my middle linebacker, I'll put him in a 0. And I will put my weak side linebacker in a 30. And I'll put my strong side linebacker in a 40. So that way, I got my whole defense lined up off of 4 numbers, 36-15. My entire defense is lined up off of 4 numbers, 36-15. Now, I can also put my tackles in 2s. I can put my tackles in 2s. That means I will call this 26-15 because weak side is in a 5. Strong side is in a 6. So this front right here, he's in a 2, he's in a 6. He's in a 1, he's in a 5. Well, this will be 26-25. To help easier, I can call all 26 and you better go 6. Nobody there, we typically say a go 6 or a ghost technique because nobody's there. Now, if I play 3 linebackers, this linebacker will be in a 0 technique. This linebacker will be in a 40. This linebacker will be in a 40 as well. So now, I got my whole defense lined up off of numbers. So I say all 26. Now my backers know they're going to be in a head-up technique. Everybody is pretty much head up, except for this weak side defensive end. He knows, and this is the way we will teach it. He knows if he's in a ghost technique or if there's a tackle, he knows to line up outside of the tackle. So this is the entire technique of being able to set a defense just off of numbers. All right, so now let's look at the secondary techniques. Secondary techniques can be different, difficult, however, because pretty much the offense gets to dictate how you line up your secondary, how you line up your linebackers. So typically a formation that we would see, let's say we see a tight end. Let's start with a simple I backfield. Typically, a team that runs the I backfield, they like to run the ball. So, technique-wise, I am teaching my cornerbacks outside technique. Typically, if I'm saying outside technique, that means I want you on this lined up on his outside shoulder. Line up on the receiver's outside shoulder. Because typically, if you run this, and I know you're running the ball and running a cover 2, or some kind of concept to where I have 7, 8 men playing the run. All right? If you have a tight end, I would typically play a safety This would be my strong safety because of tight end. And this would be my free safety because it's to the weak side. Now, if I'm running too high secondary, I can run this out of 3-4, I can run it out of 4-3. I can run it out of 5-2. So what I'm doing here is my secondary alignment is predicated on typically what we're going to get from the offense. If it's a run-heavy team, I'll probably play with one high. If I got two safeties that can go get the ball, I will go too high and let my corners play heavy run presence. If I got real athletic corners, then I got a safety that will hit and not very good in the secondary, I will probably play my cornerbacks a little deeper on the outside and probably play a cover 3. And I will roll a strong safety down in the box and let my free safety kind of play the middle of the field. So this is how we get 8 men in the box playing run for a team that typically likes to run the ball. So the number one thing we would do is stop the run. Now, let's say I got a 4-man front. So this will be my Mike, that will be my Sam, and that will be my Will. Now, if I have a team that I know like to run the ball to the strong side, I'll probably roll my strong safety up to help with the run. Now, here, because I already got 7 in the box, I can disguise this a little bit. I can disguise it a little bit, and I can either run, play my corners a little tighter. My cornerbacks will help with contain, and my safety will be over top, or snap of the ball. I can roll him back, roll him down, roll him back, and a cover 3 look. So this will kind of help us guys and make people want to throw the ball, or make people want to run the ball. Typically when people see two high safeties, hey, we got numbers in the box, let's run the ball. Now, typically in an odd front, I still play my corners in the same technique. Same look, 5-man front, and I can still play 2 safeties high. Now, if I'm still going to play two safeties high, how can I get another safety in the box? The only person I'm moving around is my safety. Now, for offense to start being creative and start manipulating your secondary is so now they're making me move my secondary. So when this happens, I have to move my cornerback out. I have to move a safety. I have to match numbers. So if I'm matching numbers here, that means if I get outflanked on this side, How am I going to hold this tight end? That's a little more sound and a little more secure from the secondary. It's a lot of grass to be covered, but I can't get out flank. The good thing about running an odd front is I can use my linebackers to make the adjustment as well with my secondary. So if I get this right here, I'm setting my cornerbacks first, then my secondary to make sure we're sound and we got the pass covered. The next thing I'm going to do is, with the tight end, I have to match this. So, still out man, strong side because tight end, number of receivers. I'm bringing my strong safety down in the box. Another thing I can do is, still got my Sam in my wheel. If this guy's athletic enough, I can move my secondary around. The thing that helps, still an odd front, I'm just utilizing this guy so he can help me with the run back this way. He still knows his responsibility, but I'm also collisioning this guy, and I can still play a cover 3 concept. I can still get a cover 3 concept by this alignment. While also if we play in a read, I can still get this guy contained, and I can stunt, and I can still be sound with the way I play this. Now let's look at 2 wide receiver concept. Two wide receiver concept and an odd front. Two wide receiver concept and an odd front. I'm still living with this. Typically, what I would do is key, unless it's an RPO, you'll get a false read. I would key this, key pass set, we look up number 2 and we drop flat. Try to get a hand on number 2, drop flat. Cover 4 concept, quarters. Try to key the guards. They pull. We have it on run. Pull this way. We have it on run. Pass set. We drop it. These guys, we can either jet. We can either slant to the back or away from the back. It's however you choose to call it, or whatever you're trying to take away. You can also blitz these backs, or these outside backers, and cause a problem. Typically, you want to try to get a 5 or a 6 man pressure out of an even front. Now, also, where you would get manipulated, if you're in a 4-3 defense versus a spread look. Now, you run two high safeties, what are you going to do with your outside linebacker? Some people will move their backers out the box. Some people will use their safeties. Just however you choose to be manipulated by the offense. So one thing is, you get these guys lined up, and now you can move the secondary around as you please. You just got to make sure you can match the numbers on the outside, as well as be able to line up to whatever the offense lines up in. Now, of course, we can get more in depth and look at some trips, coverages, alignment to trips, but that comes with film study. However you choose, and knowing your athletes and what you're good at is going to determine what you really run. So, this is just the basis of knowing how to line up to an offense, knowing what your positions are, knowing how to not get manipulated by defense or by offense. Being able to manipulate and dictate what the offense is going to do, however you're going to send pressure, however you're going to line your secondary, and things like that. What do you want to take away? What do you want to be good at? So that is how you line up your front, your linebackers, and your secondary to different offenses.